In New York, almost every group has its own worries. Office workers are anxious, tense, and even suffer from indigestion. On weekends, although the people on the streets seem to live comfortably, many are still preoccupied with their own concerns. Even those who are very wealthy and surrounded by opportunities for enjoyment often feel a deep sense of emptiness and dissatisfaction. This feeling of unhappiness is widespread, permeating almost every social class. Russell believes that the roots of unhappiness can be divided into two parts, one stemming from societal structures and the other from individual psychological states. He has written extensively about improving society, so in this book, he focuses more on how individuals can find remedies for their day-to-day unhappiness. It's often the feelings of unhappiness with no obvious external cause that are the most painful. Self-absorption comes in many forms, but the most typical are guilt, narcissism, and megalomania. People obsessed with guilt are constantly trapped in feelings of self-blame. Narcissists love to admire themselves and want others to admire them too. When this narcissism becomes excessive, it leads to serious consequences. Megalomaniacs, on the other hand, crave power. They want others to fear them, not love them. Self-absorbed people are often deprived of certain satisfactions in their youth, which makes their lives one-dimensional. They become overly focused on achievements while neglecting the activities related to those achievements. Over time, they may become numb to any form of satisfaction, craving only distraction and oblivion. In this state, people easily turn into pleasure addicts, chasing fleeting happiness but never experiencing deep, lasting joy. Russell points out that for those deeply trapped in self-absorption and seemingly beyond help, external discipline might be the only path to happiness. These individuals may long for the unconditional love and comfort they once received from their mothers, yet this childhood joy can never return to their lives. Narcissists often impose limits on themselves, much like those obsessed with guilt are controlled by their feelings of sin. A person who is overly hypocritical or self-restricting will no longer be able to enjoy activities like hunting or entertainment. Excessive hypocrisy kills all the joy in life, leading only to exhaustion and boredom. Russell also notes that a source of happiness lies in a moderate amount of power. When power becomes the sole aim in life, it invites internal or external disaster. Happy people know how to balance power and joy without letting power become their only concern. Byronic unhappiness refers to a deep pessimism, the belief that life is destined to end in failure. Byron, Crutch, and the author of Ecclesiastes all shared the view that being human is not a curse, despite the inevitability of failure. Byron said, "What pleasure is there in this world that can compare with what it takes away?" Similarly, in Ecclesiastes, we read the lament, "I praise the dead who have already died, more than the living who are still alive." Despite indulging in pleasures, they ultimately viewed everything as vanity. Crutch lived among New York's intellectual elite, Byron led a life of many romantic affairs, and the author of Ecclesiastes pursued all kinds of pleasures. Yet in the end, they all felt that these joys were empty. Russell points out that people who suffer often gain a sense of superiority and insight, but these traits aren't enough to compensate for the simple joys they've lost. A wise person should enjoy life's pleasures fully, but when they find that contemplating the universe brings more pain than they can bear, they should shift their focus to something else, rather than cling to their suffering. Sometimes the reason for pain might be that natural desires are too easily satisfied. If a person gets everything they want with little effort, they may find that even when their desires are fulfilled, they still don't feel happy. Happiness isn't entirely dependent on reason. It's more about our emotions and desires. If our emotions were entirely ruled by reason, we'd have as much reason to feel joy as we would to feel despair, because both can be justified by logic. A truly happy life is one with limits, and it's precisely these limits that keep life interesting. Love is one of the most precious sources of happiness in our lives. It's not just about receiving sweet rewards, but about an undying flame that never goes out. True love is enduring and does not fade with time. Once we experience true love, the whole world seems brighter. Russell points out that modern society has a widespread misunderstanding. The struggle for survival is often mistaken for the struggle for success. People aren't really worried about not having food on the table the next morning. They're more concerned about whether they can surpass their neighbors and achieve greater success and social status. This pressure to compete forces people to sacrifice other parts of their lives in the pursuit of success. Those at the top of their industries are often trapped by relentless competition. Even though they've earned enough money to live comfortably, they still chase after more achievements. Every day they come home from work exhausted, yet they feel compelled to attend social events, pretending to enjoy lavish dinners. This pressure to compete not only affects individuals, but also impacts family life. In such a competitive lifestyle, people pay less and less attention to their families. Even if they have beautiful homes, lovely spouses, and adorable children, they know less and less about their loved ones. They rush off to work in the morning and spend their evenings at networking events. There's hardly any close communication between spouses. Boredom is a uniquely human emotion, often arising from dissatisfaction with the present and a longing for something better. The opposite of boredom isn't happiness, it's excitement. Humans, especially men, have a strong desire for excitement. In the hunting era, this desire was easily fulfilled through activities like hunting, warfare, and courtship, all of which were full of thrills. However, with the advent of the agricultural age, life became increasingly dull. There were fewer opportunities for excitement, and daily life grew more monotonous. To escape this monotony, people constantly seek new thrills. But this lifestyle is unsustainable and eventually leads to exhaustion and burnout. The kind of boredom that has value is the kind that avoids self-numbing behaviors, while meaningless boredom usually comes from having nothing to do. Russell believes that the ability to endure boredom is key to a happy life. Those who are addicted to constant stimulation are like people addicted to hot spices. Eventually, even amounts of spice that would suffocate others fail to excite them. Fatigue comes in many forms, with the most common being pure physical fatigue. Moderate physical fatigue is actually beneficial for happiness, but excessive fatigue can cause great harm. In the early days of industrialization, child laborers suffered from overwork, leading to stunted growth and even premature death. Even today, excessive physical labor remains a cruel form of suffering. However, in today's most developed societies, the most severe type of fatigue is nervous fatigue. This is especially common among the wealthy, and it's often worse than what the working class experiences. Nervous fatigue stems from the noise and complexity of modern life. Every day, urban workers are surrounded by noise. To protect themselves from being disturbed by it, they subconsciously block out most of the sounds, but this only makes them even more tired. Additionally, modern people often have to deal with strangers, and our instincts drive us to figure out everyone's intentions. This constant underlying tension also causes nervous fatigue. Especially in crowded spaces like subways, people have to suppress this instinct, which fills them with unexpressed anger. Russell points out that a lot of fatigue comes from worry, and worry can be prevented with a better life philosophy and mental discipline. Most people can't control their thoughts and are constantly troubled by anxiety. To reduce worry, we first need to realize that the things that cause our anxiety are often trivial. Russell gives an example from his own experience. At first, public speaking terrified him, and he gave terrible speeches due to his nerves. But over time, he realized that whether he spoke well or poorly, the universe would keep spinning. Gradually, he stopped caring about the outcome of his speeches, and as a result, he became a better speaker and his nervousness disappeared. Russell also emphasizes that our conscious mind has a significant impact on our subconscious. If you want your rational beliefs to influence your subconscious, you need to understand the relationship between the two. For example, when you're afraid of something, you can consciously face the worst possible outcome and convince yourself to accept it. Eventually, you'll find that the fear fades away, replaced by a sense of inner calm. Worry is essentially a form of fear, and all fears lead to fatigue. Someone who learns not to be afraid will significantly reduce their daily fatigue. The most harmful fears are those we refuse to confront. Many people try to distract themselves from their fears through entertainment or work, but this strategy often makes the fear worse. Russell suggests that the proper approach is to think rationally, calmly, and with full focus about the fear until you become entirely familiar with it. As familiarity grows, fear becomes boring, and it will naturally disappear. Envy is a very common human emotion, not just among children, but also among adults. Russell believes that envy plays a significant role in democratic politics, to the point where it can be said to be the foundation of democracy. Democratic movements are often driven by envy, as people don't want anyone to be above them. In relationships, women typically envy other women, while men tend to envy their peers. Russell also points out that envy not only causes pain for those who feel it, but also generates hostility toward others' achievements. Envious people don't derive joy from what they have. Instead, they feel pain because of what others possess. When envy runs rampant, it can stifle all positive qualities and bury exceptional talents. Russell suggests that envy often stems from an unhappy childhood. If a child feels less loved than their siblings, they may develop a habit of envy. As adults, this habit can extend to how they view society, making them feel as though they've been abandoned by the world. For ordinary people, the only way to cure envy is to find genuine happiness. Recognizing why you feel envious is the first step toward happiness. The habit, comparing oneself to others, is deadly. We should fully enjoy the pleasures in our lives instead of constantly measuring our happiness against others. The best way to cure envy is through mental training, by focusing on things that truly matter and ignoring the rest. Guilt is one of the most fundamental reasons for unhappiness in adulthood. Conscience isn't the voice of God. It's a product of local customs. Guilt is often rooted in the subconscious, while the fear of being ostracized exists in the conscious mind. Guilt makes people gloomy and self-doubting. This emotion hinders personal harmony and development. To escape inner pain, people overwhelmed by guilt often immerse themselves in intense passions and activities, hoping to temporarily forget themselves. Russell believes that the key to reducing guilt is to look at it rationally and not let emotions control you. Everyone must think through and establish their own set of beliefs and stick to them at all times. By carefully contemplating and consistently applying rational beliefs, we can overcome the immature suggestions of our subconscious and may even change its content. Persecution delusion is an extreme manifestation of normal psychological tendencies. While it hasn't reached the level of insanity, people with persecution delusions believe they've been harmed by ungrateful, malicious, and treacherous individuals. They always see themselves as victims and constantly complain about being persecuted. The problem is, these people seem to encounter an unusual number of bad actors. The root of persecution delusion lies in people's tendency to exaggerate their own virtues, believing they deserve more praise and recognition than they receive. However, no matter what field you're in, if you always feel that others underestimate you, it's not wise to assume they're wrong. Russell offers several suggestions for preventing and treating persecution delusion. First, your motives aren't always as selfless as you think. Philanthropists and politicians especially need to question their own motives. Second, overestimating your own worth is unwise. If you constantly feel underappreciated, it's time to reassess your abilities. Third, don't expect too much from others. Everyone views the world from their own perspective, not yours. Finally, remember that others spend far less time thinking about you than you spend thinking about yourself. If you always assume people have ulterior motives, you might be overinterpreting their behavior. In modern society, different groups have different worldviews and lifestyles. Protestants and Catholics, for example, have many theological and daily life differences. Liberals and free thinkers reject religious obligations, while socialists hold deep disagreements with others. These differences aren't just theoretical. They permeate all aspects of life. Fear of public opinion has a profound impact on individual happiness. Someone with particular tastes and beliefs often finds themselves an outcast in certain groups. This is especially true for young people, who often fear being seen as rebellious and therefore hesitate to express their views, leading to deep unhappiness. Russell advises young people who find themselves at odds with their environment to choose a profession where they are likely to meet kindred spirits. Young people often have a limited understanding of the world and may believe that the biases they encounter at home are universal. Understanding this takes experience, so older people should offer guidance to the younger generation. Russell also notes that our respect for public opinion should be limited to avoiding hunger and prison. Anything beyond that is a voluntary surrender to unnecessary tyranny. A society that's too homogeneous would be terribly dull. Everyone should maintain their individuality, cultivate their unique tastes, and not abandon themselves just to please neighbors or relatives. True happiness comes from mental freedom, not from conforming to others' expectations. Happiness isn't some distant, unattainable thing. It just comes in different forms and from different sources. Russell believes there are two types of happiness. One is simple happiness, and the other is luxurious happiness. Simple happiness comes from physical vitality and labor, from overcoming the various difficulties in life and feeling a sense of accomplishment. Luxurious happiness, on the other hand, favors those who can read and write. The difference between these two types of happiness is significant. Simple happiness is something everyone can experience, while luxurious happiness requires a certain level of cultural accumulation and intellectual activity. Educated people usually derive happiness from achievement. To enjoy the pleasure of accomplishment, they often have to face many difficulties and overcome initially slim odds to reach their goals. However, Russell reminds us that while the pursuit of achievement is part of happiness, we shouldn't be too arrogant or too humble. Overestimating your abilities might make you more ambitious when facing challenges, while underestimating yourself often leads to a lack of initiative. The former is more likely to lead to happiness, while the latter tends to result in unhappiness. To Russell, scientists are among the happiest people. They typically find deep satisfaction in their work, and this fulfillment is so profound that it makes them happy in other areas of life as well. Scientists focus most of their intellectual energy on their work and don't allow that energy to spill into areas where they're powerless. They find joy in their work because technological progress makes their efforts seem incredibly valuable, and both they and lay people never question the significance of science. Compared to scientists, the sources of happiness for artists and writers are more complex. While they also derive satisfaction from their creative work, they often have to endure unhappiness in their marriages. This unhappiness is partly due to social needs, whereas scientists are usually able to enjoy traditional domestic bliss. In their artistic endeavors, the best artists often face a dilemma. Their talents may be scorned by others, but if they don't express their gifts, they feel contemptible. Despite this, Russell notes that in certain eras, even the best artists can gain recognition while they're still young. For example, although Pope Julius II tormented Michelangelo, he never doubted the artist's talent. Russell mentions that in Eastern countries, intelligent young people may find it easier to achieve happiness in the Soviet Union compared to other places. Soviet youth are full of passion and belief, convinced that they're creating a new world. All remnants of the old world have been wiped away, so young people no longer have to oscillate between inactivity and mischief. In India, China, and Japan, while external conditions may hinder the happiness of young intellectuals, they don't face the same internal obstacles as in Western countries. They're filled with confidence in their country's future, believing that they play a vital role in the life of the nation. Even in today's machine-driven economy, craftsmen remain indispensable. They manufacture precision instruments, design machines, and even operate airplanes and cars. These skilled workers continually improve their abilities, maximizing their potential. Those who operate modern machinery feel a sense of power, knowing they command the forces of nature rather than being enslaved by them. Of course, those who merely tend to machines, performing repetitive mechanical tasks, may find their work dull. But as technology advances, these types of jobs are increasingly being automated. Russell emphasizes that craftsmen in modern society are still incredibly important. They continue to advance in their fields, gaining a great sense of achievement and satisfaction. Russell believes that faith in a cause is another source of happiness for many people. The causes mentioned here aren't limited to revolutionaries, socialists, or nationalists. They include many other types of beliefs. It's easy for people to find a cause that isn't delusional and dedicate time and energy to it. This faith gives their lives meaning, making them feel less empty. Russell points out that kindness and consideration are forms of love that isn't possessive and doesn't expect anything in return. Love that promotes happiness comes from observing and appreciating the personalities of others, genuinely caring for and pleasing those we interact with, without demanding their compliance or praise. Kindness and consideration toward things also help us find happiness in everyday life. For example, a geologist's interest in rocks or an archaeologist's passion for ruins can help them forget life's troubles. This type of love isn't tied to personal emotions. It's purely about curiosity and appreciation for the external world. Through such interests, they can achieve inner peace and calm. Enthusiasm is one of the hallmarks of a happy person. Just as hunger is to food, enthusiasm is vital to human life. A person who is enthusiastic about life can find joy in all sorts of mundane things. For instance, someone who loves strawberries will think they're the most delicious thing in the world, while someone who doesn't enjoy strawberries will find them tasteless. Clearly, the former has more fun. The wider a person's range of interests, the more opportunities they have for happiness. As long as you're passionate about something in life, you're less likely to be at the mercy of fate. Whether it's a love for birds, plants, geology, or food, these interests will make life feel fulfilling and satisfying. While enthusiasm can lead to happiness, balancing various activities in life is equally important. Overindulging in one pursuit may rob you of the chance to enjoy others. For example, someone who's overly obsessed with food might sacrifice other pleasures, reducing their overall happiness. Russell believes that all desires must fit within the broader framework of life, without harming your health, emotions, or reputation. Some passions can be pursued freely without crossing any limits, while others must be kept in check. If you're a financially independent bachelor, indulging in chess might be harmless, but if you have a family to take care of, you'll need to strictly control that passion. Freedom is essential to life. Russell points out that the loss of enthusiasm in civilized societies is often linked to restrictions on freedom. In primitive societies, a hunter would go hunting when hungry. His actions were direct, with no barriers in between. But in modern society, work requires division of labor, making people's motivations indirect and stifling their enthusiasm. To maintain enthusiasm, a person needs a healthy mind and body, ample energy, or the good fortune to engage in work they're passionate about. Although civilized life presents many obstacles, some people still manage to keep their enthusiasm alive. The key to this is freeing themselves from internal conflicts and exhaustion. Russell points out that many women's enthusiasm has significantly diminished due to a misguided understanding of what it means to be proper. They've learned not to care about men's lives and, over time, lose interest in everything else as well. This hostility toward enthusiasm reflects the attitudes of proper women. They dislike sports, show no interest in politics, remain cold toward men, and harbor hidden animosity toward other women. These women see shyness as a virtue and openness as a vice. They pride themselves on their aloofness, avoiding social interaction, and even take pride in their coldness. In fact, they're not only disinterested in men, but are also indifferent toward their fellow women. A major reason for the lack of enthusiasm is the feeling of being unloved. Many people feel unworthy of love for various reasons, perhaps because they didn't receive enough affection in childhood, or because early misfortunes caused them to develop feelings of inferiority. These experiences make them feel abandoned by the world. Russell believes that the source of security isn't in giving love, but in receiving love. A child who is loved by their parents takes this love for granted and feels secure. This sense of security is crucial in all aspects of life. Many of life's difficulties can be easily overcome if you approach them with confidence. But if you're fearful, those same challenges become much harder to deal with. Russell argues that true love should be bold, not timid. Good love doesn't just want the other person to be safe, it wants them to excel. An overly cautious mother always tells her child to be careful of everything, as if every dog will bite and every cow is dangerous. Such a mother wants her child to depend on her rather than rely on their own abilities to face the world. The best kind of love is mutual love. When two people are contentedly giving and receiving from each other, the whole world becomes more interesting. Mutual love doesn't just enhance individual happiness, it also promotes shared interests. Russell believes that mutual love is one of the most important factors in achieving true happiness. The obstacles to mutual love can be psychological or social, and both are serious problems. People are often hesitant to give love freely, fearing they'll be hurt in return. Morality and social norms frequently warn us to be cautious, and as a result, when it comes to love, our generosity and willingness to take risks are suppressed. Russell points out that both giving and receiving love require an open attitude, not one focused on calculating returns. True love is unconditional, and any attempt to measure love based on what you get back will ultimately render that love meaningless. The family is the foundation of a happy life, especially the love between parents and children. This love isn't just an emotion, it's also a sense of responsibility. Russell believes that modern parents often find themselves in a dilemma. On the one hand, they want to give their children enough freedom, but on the other hand, they fear losing control over them. Finding a balance between freedom and control is a key challenge for modern parents. Parental happiness comes from two main sources. First, parents feel that their lives are being extended through their children, who are a part of them and transcend their own mortality. Second, parents experience a combination of power and tenderness in caring for their children. New life is helpless, and so parents feel a strong urge to meet their children's needs, which not only makes the children happy, but also gives parents a sense of power and fulfillment. Russell points out that women in modern affluent societies often feel that the burden of parenting is heavier than it was in the past. On the one hand, single women have their own careers, and on the other hand, domestic services have declined. This leaves many women hesitant about having children. Even when they decide to have children, housing issues in modern society make life harder for them. Families in big cities often live in cramped apartments with little access to nature, which adds to mothers' stress. Moreover, the scarcity and poor quality of domestic help force mothers to take on a lot of trivial tasks. These tasks have nothing to do with their skills or education, and over time, they may grow weary of life. This feeling of fatigue often spills over into their relationships with their children, straining the mother-child bond. Russell emphasizes that mothers shouldn't give up their personal interests, as this is crucial for both their happiness and their children's well-being. If a mother sees child-rearing as her profession, she can apply her skills to raising not only her own children, but also helping care for others. Mothers should learn to respect their children's individuality and not try to control them out of a desire for power. Parents who truly want their children to be happy don't need a psychology textbook to tell them what to do. They rely on their inner sense of direction. Russell points out that work is the best defense against boredom. While necessary but tedious work can be dull, this kind of boredom is far better than the boredom of having nothing to do. If people were free to choose how to spend their time, most would find themselves confused, not knowing what to do. In this sense, work provides people with direction and purpose. Work not only fills up time, but also brings a sense of accomplishment. Even the smallest achievements can bring happiness. Russell believes that most work offers two kinds of satisfaction. It fills our idle time and provides an opportunity to fulfill our ambitions. Even jobs that don't pay much can give people a sense of achievement and satisfaction. Russell believes that constructive work is the most satisfying type of work. After completing a constructive task, simply looking at the results brings joy. This joy doesn't just come from the work itself, but from its lasting impact. Work is never perfect. There's always room for improvement. Constructive work provides an ongoing process of striving for success rather than a finite goal. Russell particularly emphasizes that completing a great constructive project is one of the most tangible forms of happiness in life. Whether it's turning barren land into a blooming garden or creating a new organization, these are the kinds of activities that bring the greatest sense of fulfillment. If someone has the opportunity to do work that satisfies both their constructive impulses and their need to make a living, they should cherish that opportunity. Russell points out that work isn't just about making a living, it's about earning self-respect. Someone who's ashamed of their work can hardly have self-respect, and without self-respect, true happiness is impossible. Leisure refers to hobbies and interests outside of one's main work. It allows people to relax and unwind from the tensions of daily life. Russell believes that interests closely related to one's work don't count as leisure. True leisure activities are those that fill the gaps in our lives and help us separate the important from the trivial. They remind us that life isn't just about work. There's a whole world out there waiting to be explored. Leisure also comforts the soul, preventing us from becoming fanatical. We often place too much importance on one aspect of life, becoming overly tense and fixated on immediate concerns. Leisure helps us break free from this narrow perspective and encourages us to view life from a broader angle. Russell suggests that we cultivate some leisure activities in addition to our main pleasures in life. These interests should not involve willpower or quick decision-making, nor should they, like gambling, involve financial stakes. Leisure activities shouldn't be too exciting or exhausting, and they shouldn't take up too much of our time or energy. Their role is to help us relax, not to create additional stress. Russell notes that there are extreme advocates for both effort and letting go. Saints and mystics praise the elegance of letting go, while efficiency experts and fitness enthusiasts emphasize the value of effort. Happiness doesn't come naturally. It requires effort both internally and externally. In rare cases, happiness might not demand much effort, but for most people, happiness is an achievement, not a gift from above. Anyone who works for a living needs to make an effort. Russell mentions that Indian mendicants might not need to work hard to earn a living, but in modern society, governments don't encourage this method of income. In a competitive modern world, only a few people rise to the top. Therefore, for most people, it's wise to let go of unrealistic goals. When it comes to raising children, effort is equally indispensable. Those who believe in letting go or hold on to spiritual supremacy often overlook the effort required to raise children. Russell notes that in societies where such beliefs prevail, infant mortality rates tend to be high because parents lack a sense of responsibility and the will to make an effort. Russell believes there are two forms of letting go, one born of despair and the other born of unshakable hope. A person who suffers a significant loss might give up because they've lost hope. But when someone lets go with a broader hope in mind, their approach to life is entirely different. If a person is focused on grander goals, they can remain calm when facing failure at work or an unhappy marriage. To them, these personal misfortunes are like rainy days, just random occurrences in life. Russell also points out that a person who's free from worry will find that life is much more enjoyable than when they were anxious. Things that once made them hysterical now only seem amusing. If a boring neighbor suddenly visits and interrupts their marriage proposal, they might remember that, except for Adam, everyone else in history has faced this kind of disaster, and Adam certainly had his own troubles too. Russell points out that a certain level of letting go isn't negative. It's a positive attitude toward facing one's true self. While confronting the truth about ourselves may be painful, it ultimately spares us the disappointment and disillusionment of self-deception. It's incredibly exhausting to constantly force yourself to believe in something increasingly absurd. Ending this self-deception is a necessary step toward lasting happiness and inner security. A happy person doesn't suffer from a lack of harmony between their conscious and subconscious, nor do they feel at odds with the world. They see themselves as part of the world, freely enjoying the beauty of life and its pleasures. Even when faced with death, a happy person doesn't feel excessive sorrow because they feel a deep connection to those who will come after them. This connection to the flow of life is one of the greatest joys of a happy life. Russell believes that the primary reason modern people are unhappy is that they're tired. In modern society, the most serious form of fatigue is nervous fatigue. The overwhelming amount of information and complex social interactions in urban life often leave people feeling mentally and physically exhausted. The uncertainty in modern professional life only makes this fatigue worse. People worry about being replaced or fired, and the pressures of life make them feel like they're running on a treadmill. The second reason is boredom. The sense of boredom in modern society often stems from people's desire for something new to happen, but that new thing never seems to arrive. Many people can't enjoy solitude and constantly seek stimulation to pass the time. This craving for excitement only adds to their unhappiness. The third reason is fear. Modern society is in a state of constant change, and the generation gap between the young and the old brings various worries to young people. Russell highlights a particular kind of fear, paranoia. Many people feel they're being excluded or betrayed, filling their lives with mistrust and fear. Lastly, there's unhealthy comparison. People often feel unhappy because they're constantly comparing themselves to others. Modern society places too much emphasis on success and excellence, leading people to pursue surpassing others at the expense of inner contentment. This mindset of comparison traps many in a vicious cycle. The more they compare, the less happy they become. Russell offers several ways to enhance happiness in modern life. First, improve your time management and ensure you get enough sleep. Smart people only think about their worries when necessary and spend the rest of their time relaxing their minds. The fast pace of modern life leaves many people feeling constantly drained, with no idea how to unwind. Russell suggests avoiding over-reliance on alcohol or other forms of escapism, as they don't bring true happiness. Second, don't invest too much energy in unnecessary matters. Modern people often spend excessive time on entertainment, leading to overstimulation and poor sleep quality. Russell advises practicing moderation in entertainment and avoiding becoming addicted to fleeting thrills. Third, don't overestimate the importance of your work. Learn to lower your expectations. Many times, our anxiety comes from setting unrealistic standards for ourselves. Russell suggests realizing that most of the things that cause us to worry are trivial, which can significantly reduce feelings of anxiety. In life, we need to learn to relax and not demand perfection from ourselves. Finally, cultivate hobbies and find your own path in life. Russell points out that many of life's pleasures are subjective. For example, some people love strawberries while others don't. Whatever you enjoy, as long as it brings you happiness, that's what matters. The important thing is to define happiness on your own terms based on your circumstances and interests, rather than blindly following society's standards. Russell believes that a happy life is one filled with joy, not one achieved through self-denial or excessive restraint. Moralists place too much emphasis on self-denial, focusing their attention on the wrong things. Conscious self-denial makes people overly aware of what they've sacrificed, preventing them from achieving both direct and ultimate goals. In contrast, a happy life is one that's outwardly focused, naturally guiding us to take action. This way of life doesn't require deliberate self-denial, but brings happiness through concern for external matters. Russell believes that a happy life isn't a passive state, but an active pursuit, rooted in an open attitude toward the world. Russell points out that love should have some degree of selfishness because successful love brings happiness. If a man proposes to a woman solely because he wants her to be happy and sees it as an act of self-sacrifice, the woman is unlikely to feel happy. We should want the person we love to be happy, but their happiness should not replace our own. In fact, the doctrine of self-denial implies a conflict between the self and the world, while true happiness comes from our concern and love for the external world. A happy person doesn't suffer from conflicts between their conscious and subconscious, nor do they feel at odds with the world. They see themselves as part of the world, enjoying its beauty and pleasures. Even when faced with death, they don't feel excessive sorrow, as they see themselves deeply connected to those who will come after them. This profound connection to the flow of life is one of the greatest joys of a happy life. Russell believes that to overcome self-absorption and find genuine interests, one must develop a true concern for the outside world rather than a fake concern aimed at curing oneself. If a person is suffering from guilt, they can resolve the issue by convincing themselves they're innocent. Through the practice of rational thinking, they can embed this belief into their subconscious, eventually overcoming their guilt. Similarly, if someone is stuck in self-pity, they can alleviate their suffering by convincing themselves that the world isn't particularly hostile toward them. If a person is suffering because of fear, they can overcome it through exercises in courage. Russell believes that once someone has overcome self-absorption, their interests should naturally emerge from the interaction between their personality and the external environment. People shouldn't force themselves to like certain things, but should trust that once they're no longer self-absorbed, their true interests will naturally arise. Russell points out that all great works have boring parts, and all great lives have dull moments. Great individuals are often able to endure a quiet, uneventful life. Their joy doesn't come from excitement as perceived by outsiders, but from their inner focus and passion. Socrates spent most of his life in peaceful conversations and thought with friends. Kant never left his hometown for more than 10 miles. Darwin, after traveling the world, chose to spend the rest of his life at home. Marx, after stirring up several revolutions, spent his later years in the British Museum. To outsiders, these lives may not seem thrilling, but these great people found deep satisfaction in their daily routines. Russell believes that the ability to endure the mundane and find joy in ordinary life is a common trait among great individuals. Russell believes that happy people don't suffer from conflicts between their conscious and subconscious, nor do they feel at odds with the world. They see themselves as part of the world, enjoying its beauty and pleasures. They don't feel excessive sorrow when thinking about death because they feel deeply connected to those who will come after them. This connection to the flow of life is one of the greatest joys of a happy life. Happy people freely love and care for others. They feel happiness because of the love they give and receive and feel fulfilled by their concern for others. Receiving love is an important source of happiness, and those who give love often receive even more in return. Russell reminds us that love shouldn't be about calculating rewards. It should come from sincere care. Only love that comes from the heart can bring true happiness. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.